Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Today we'll be taking a closer look at the CR30 by Creality and find out how this machine performs or who it might be designed for. Now, full disclaimer before we begin, I purchased this machine with my own money and was not paid to do this video, so everything you see here will be based on my own opinion. I bought this machine during the initial Kickstarter and received it a couple months ago. However, in order to properly test its performance, I created a large-scale project just for this machine. You'll see more about that project in a later video. Now, this machine is amongst the heaviest I've owned yet, so you'll need to make sure that's on a solid surface when you set it up. This printer does require some additional setup because of the design. However, the process is made easier thanks to the included video tutorial. I did find that the tutorial was well made and covered all the assembly quite thoroughly, and this does seem to be a positive trend towards more and more companies. In order to use this machine, you're going to need to use at least one of two options. The first is the Creality Belt software that came with the printer. The second option is to use the Black Belt printing software, which can be customized to fit this machine. All testing was done using the provided software in this case, since it has been custom designed with additional features. The biggest issue that I encountered was the performance of the software itself. In this case, I had to disable some of the extra plugins to increase the performance. However, there was a significant delay when loading up files. In this particular case, I had created a large project which was designed to test the printer for an extended period of time. However, in order to load just one piece, it would take up to 30 minutes and took even longer to properly slice the file. The same file loaded in Cura took a fraction amount of time to load. The workaround I found was to slice files individually and then recombine the G-code to better leverage the printer's ability to continuously print files. To do this, you open up the sliced files that you want to combine and copy and paste all the G-code above the NG-code text. You'll then repeat this process until you combine all your files together. Once this is completed, you can then delete the extra NG code that you don't need. When printing identical pieces, I didn't run into any issues using an integrated copy function. Now, this machine does have a couple of important things you need to do prior to actually printing with the device. The first thing you'll need to do is to condition the belt. I didn't know this until I was getting continuously failed prints when fully utilizing the build plate. To do this, you'll turn on the machine, raise the hot end so that you have full access to the belt. You'll then take a rag and rub some isopropyl alcohol into surface while moving the Z height forward. This helps to remove the coating that is on the belt when it first comes with printer. The second thing you'll do is replace the Bowden tube with a Capricorn one, since the heat creep is a very serious issue with this particular device. To do this, you'll remove the spacer holding the pneumatic connector in a lock position and press down on the locking mechanism to release the tubing. This can sometimes be difficult to remove, so be careful not to damage the teeth inside. Now, I did test the thermal runaway protection on this machine, so I can confirm that it's functioning properly. However, I did find that the terminals have tin connections which will need to be replaced. I will go through that process in more detail in a follow-up video. I did find that this machine required the filament to be heated above 210 degrees, otherwise I would often have adhesion issues. For my machine, I set the fan speed to 100%, making sure to set the second one to the same value. The initial fan speed was set to 0 to ensure a better successful first layer. Now, although my very first prints looked promising, I soon began running into issues once I reached around the 2 weeks of continuous operation. My print started going from a nice clean print to a very rough surface. In my case, it was due to the Bowden tube experiencing heat creep, which in turn caused the opening to shrink and prevent a consistent flow of filament. It was at this stage that I had to switch to a Capricorn tubing. It was also during this time that I began experiencing issues with prints not sticking to the bed, which is when I decided to do a thorough cleaning to remove the residue that might be on the belt. This printer came with a steel feeler gauge, which I highly recommend you use when leveling the print bed. This provided me with a much higher accuracy and is what I've since switched to for all my printers. When you do this, however, you'll need to make sure to raise the print head to the same value as the thickness of the measuring tool. Otherwise, it will create an excess distance which can cause print failures. When leveling the bed, I would bring the front build plate all the way down first, following by leveling the back of the build plate, which is right underneath the hot end. Afterwards, I would raise the front upwards slightly to ensure that I had even tension across the build plate. I would finish this up with a last calibration at the back portion to make sure that everything was still level closer to the hot end. Something to keep in mind is that I had to play around with the filament runout detector to get it so that it was aligned more with the extruder. I ended up tilting it slightly upwards, which relieved a bit of the pressure on the filament when traveling through the extruder. Likewise, I had to adjust the Bowden tube since it was getting caught onto the machine. For this, I used a simple zip tie to help hold it in a better location. With the test prints completed, these were my results. Now, it has been mentioned by other users in other 3D printing channels that the stepper motors on the top have very little support, and I've since ordered a replacement kit from Repcore to address this issue. When I first assembled the printer, I can say it was a large concern for me, and when doing some additional research, it does seem warranted. For the testing of this machine, however, I did not use this modification as of yet, but we'll be following this up with another video tutorial. So what is my verdict in the end? Well, it's going to depend on what you're doing. If you're producing large parts on a consistent basis, then this is a great machine to add to your collection of tools. However, it does require more work and experience to become familiar with it. it. I would definitely say that this is not a beginner machine. Leveling in itself is far more complicated than your standard machine, and there's quite a few upgrades which I would consider mandatory out of the box. So for a beginner, I would rate this machine as a 4 out of 10 since they're less likely to want to do any of these necessary changes. From a production standpoint, this is a great asset to have, and the rating is quite different with an 8 out of 10 rating. The main thing that hurts this machine most is the lack of support for the stepper motors and the Bowden tube, which should have come with a Capricorn one instead. The software is currently quite limiting, and I highly recommend that Cura actually begins supporting this style of printer, since I do expect this type of machine to become more common in small manufacturing scenarios. So although I think this machine does require some well-needed improvements, I do believe they're on the right track, and I'm looking forward to seeing future iterations of this design. Also, for those of you who actually want to use this video as a guide, keep in mind that I will be posting a transcript on my main website to make it easier to follow along. Alternatively, please feel free to slow down the video by hitting the gear icon on the bottom right hand corner of your screen to change the speed settings. If you want to support this channel, please feel free to check out some of the merch on my website. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys soon. Thank you and take care.